Protection Committee. So welcome to public. Welcome. And to today, to our committees, it's on the 23rd of October. So we've got a few things that matters, but the main one. So, the fire procedure, emergency, the fire drills here, emergency, and evacuate the building fire. The nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is to your exit via this can't be so and
Okay, can I just...
written question. So everybody in.
Right, so my name's Martin Fincher, a resident. So we've got a few questions to ask of the Highways Agency. We did get a bit of a late reply on that, and that's why. So these questions were put forward by our group, a number of the residents, and here is the person asking the question. No problem, I'm getting to that. So on maintenance and planning from the Highways Agency in Island Roads, the question was, which water pooling areas identified since 2010 remain unaddressed, and what written timeline solving these? And happened to the 2015 Critical Gully Cleaning Action Plan, I wasn't These are taken from 2010 when you came up with another action plan. What happened?
I have an answer. Gully pot. That's the issue.
Yeah, so, would you like me to supply you with a document for 2010? Answers?
Only,
Okay then,
any
so we're saying we've got an action plan and it has been fully implemented, and there's been increased gully actions, and the things we like to see is evidence of it, other than that be noted. Okay, a number of the questions that the answer to early enough.
About 50.
Yeah, but surely submitted to the updates authority. He did ask for. You just sent them into. Actually, because we.
But normally.
answers will.
Right, so do you want to ask the rest of the questions along here? These are given by different people. I'm just the spokesman for them. Yeah, thank you. So the next question is, why weren't the drains cleared before the October 2023 quite the known risks? Written procedures now exist to prevent failure.
Gullies were clean. Section 9. Surcharge.
Interesting. Yeah, so Island Roads believe. What actual evidence have we?
We can
just add, we'd like to see a copy. I'll ask the next question now. How many gully cleaners operate island-wide? Adequate for the workload? Evidence of... And can residents be notified before gully cleaning and parking and maintenance?
Next.
Yeah, if this is the only 50 minutes that we actually get supplementary.
That means it could Barry Arnold. My question is to takes 30 curves. Forward. Not really.
Is that more visible to you? I do have paper copies that Karen can bring upstairs.
I could probably manage to read most of that from here.
Okay. I think the important thing to stress is that the role of the local lead flood authority is not borne by any one member of staff across the council. And in that role, we work across a framework of management to ensure that, along with our other risk management agencies, we are dealing with the various different avenues of how we manage flood risk across the island. In that first column on there, we have avoidance of risk, and within there, to avoid risk to start with, we have development plans, we have planning policy and guidance, and we have development control planning applications that help to manage the avoidance of risk. We also have the flood risk strategy, which will be updated soon when we have the opportunity to get to the next phase of that. We also have other members of staff who understand the ground conditions, sustainable development and risks and actions that sit around the whole of the island when it comes to flood risk. And then we have the land drainage and surface water investigations and our surface water enforcement officer and his manager, the planning policy officer, who are also here this evening. In terms of reducing vulnerability, that is dealt with through a number of other practices such as building standards, code of practice, building control, as well as through developers, construction methods and how properties are designed by architects and built. In terms of reducing known flood issues, the Isle of Wight Council also works as the along with the Environment Agency to ensure that flood defences are maintained, kept clean and protected, and we also deal with coastal erosion and landslide sides of that. As a risk management authority, Southern Water also supports making sure that flood issues are reduced, as do the Highway Authority in terms of highway drainage, gullies, cleansing, and supporting some flood schemes when they go into place. Landowners, of course, also do have their own riparian responsibilities and actions that they undertake, and owners and occupiers' actions to ensure that their maintenance, permeable paving, property, flood resilience, insulation, and soakways are managed well. Alongside that, we then also have our awareness of risk, which is managed by a combination of our emergency management team and our communication team. So we have pre-flood work that is put together to help advise people how to be prepared, how to have community preparedness, which supports the flood groups across the island in the different towns that have been flooded. We also prepare comms and guidance for people to ensure that they have those early warning systems in place when they come through to us from the Environment Agency, and that we are actively communicating those. During floods, our emergency management team with the local local resilience forum, I've put my letters the right way round, with so many local RFs, they coordinate the response, they communicate the response, and they gather information and react accordingly. And then when we recover from flood, we have recovery cells of other members of staff who are put together to support the affected community, to help manage expectations, and to support signposting for public health, mental health, economic and housing support. In addition to that, we then also have teams from our business centre who process flooding from flood grants, PFR grants, and various other government grants and technical assistance. We felt it was helpful to set out that there is a number of parts of the council that act as part of the LLFA, but that wider role of managing flood risk is a role for all of those involved in all of the risk management. We are actively ensuring that we are now having those regular internal meetings, ensuring that everybody is playing their part.
Thank you for this. I have
If you don't mind, sorry, just through the chair, because we have now gone past, well, a long way over now, 3 minutes past.
Why not comment?
Sorry, sir, this isn't a... However, this is... So please, much time as do that function. Fair opportunity. First time that very aware that there's about this, and much time as possible. Verbally answering.
Covering here today to just as you're aware, engagement with challenges that we face as risk As a committee, we carry the responsibility outlined in the Local Government Act of 2000 to oversee flood risk management functions. It is our duty to ensure that we address these grave concerns and urgency with diligence. In light of the findings presented, I encourage each of you to engage vigorously in this important discussion. Insights and questions will be invaluable as we navigate the crucial issue, and my hope is that we have some consensus on recommendations. I was going to ask who would like to ask the first question. I would like to, so I would like to get our stakeholders, so for example, Island Roads, Environment Agency, Southern Water, to just introduce yourselves, and could you tell us your responsibility from the Ryde, Monkton, Mead area on this particular occasion?
We start with those in the room first. So first.
Good evening, everybody. Rob Gillespie, Chief Executive of Island Roads. Our responsibility under the highways provision to the council is for drainage maintenance. Described in one of the questions, the connection between the gully on surface drainage and connection through to a combined sewer or to another outfall. And on the night of 24th, 25th October 2023, we would be responding to the emergency the same as many other agencies and other organisation departments within the council to seek to relieve the event down at Monkton Mead. But similarly, with the overwhelming situation there, the most part of what we were doing that night was deploying sandbags and assisting residents in trying to manage the situation.
Sorry, could we then have, really sorry, I can't see. Steve Ashman, thank you.
Hello, Steve Ashman. I'm Service Director for Ringway Island Roads. My answer is very similar to Rob's, seeing as we work together. So I look after the day-to-day operational activity for Island Roads. So our activities during this event were very much about supporting the council in the emergency response, dealing with flood situations as and where we could, providing sandbags and trying to assist.
We have John O'Flynn, please, from the Environment Agency.
Good evening. So my name is John O'Flynn. I'm a operations manager with the Environment Agency. So the Environment Agency's got overarching supervisory types of flood, but specifically are associated with tidal flooding, and the sort of actions that we would take during that would be clear screens, make flood defences, the water travel through either outfall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So James Brewer, Planning Policy Manager. So I'll just touch on effectively the role that planning policy play with our kind of LLFA hat on. So we are effectively commissioning Section 19 investigations for events. So back in 5, back in 3, don't do them in-house. We don't have the expertise internally. Manager for the investigations. And then we also have hash us out around flood risk management strategy for the whole island, which obviously was last done, I think, in 2015, so that's late now, the batch of Section 19. So was that kind of follow up after the event, commission investigation out of that, by that together.
Thank you. Can I go online now to Southern Water, please? And we've got Chris first.
Hi, yeah, Chris Brahams, Head of Asset Strategy and Planning at Southern Water. So I'm here with a colleague who'll introduce himself in a minute. Our responsibility is to manage the sewerage system on the island. That includes the pumping stations which pump over to the treatment works at Sandown, and obviously some of the overflows, emergency lease into the sea.
Thank you. Adam?
Good afternoon. Yeah, I'm Adam Wilds. I'm the Customer and Stakeholder Manager for the Isle of Wight.
Malcolm. So can I just ask one question first, if that's okay? So, keep going from, then, John from the EA. So I've been passed a letter from the, for DEFRA, and there's a bit that I just don't understand, and because I'm obviously layman in this. So it talks about, so the question was, why does the EA not acknowledge the flooding that was within the system's design capacity and therefore preventable? So what I don't understand is really, and I need you to explain to me, is so the top of the flood storage wall around the recreation ground is 3.47 MOD, sorry, and so the water level is 3.16 within the flood storage area. Only would this be within the system design capacity. I get all of that, okay? What I don't get is, however, on the 25th of October, the resultant 3.16 water level was the same both inside the flood storage area and across the wide area outside the walls. As a result, the total quantity of water across the site would not have been contained within the flood storage area, which is why we do not accept the flood was preventable. Obviously, that's written by DEFRA, but obviously you deal with them. What I don't understand is because there was only 2 boards, that's why it was the same inside and outside.
That certainly could well have contributed to that, yeah, so the water level was the same on both sides, and we have had a look at what quantities of water were on the outside, and I've completed a kind of a draft assessment of how much water was outside, and if you have a look at the freeboard between that 3.16 and the top of the wall, that water would not be, you could not put all of that water that was outside into the wreck. It would then flow back out again. So,
but a lot of that was on the outside would have been surface water from the roads, etc.
there would have been, yeah, there would have been an amount of surface water, yes.
I'm really sorry, colleagues, just one more question. So when the design was originally done, it was going to be 6 inches higher, I believe, and it was decided it wasn't going to be. I just wondered why. I mean, eventually we're going to need a higher wall, I think, with tidal stuff that's going on. Do you want to take that up? Because you've got more understanding of that.
If I can just get you to elaborate on that point, please, John. The point that Councillor Sioni is pointing out is that there is a recognition there's an equilibrium between the outside water and inside water, and therefore it wasn't preventable. However, the inside water should have been allowed to go up to the level of 3.14 meters above sea level, let's call it that. And then if there's any overtopping, then you could say perhaps unpreventable. However, that wasn't done because the boards weren't put in place. Therefore, an equilibrium was allowed to happen at a much lower level. So to that end, do you accept that the point that the DEFRA have come back to is incorrect because the boards were not put in place as designed?
It's unclear how much water on the outside was from the river going over the boards or from surface water, but ultimately the amount of water that was on the outside is significantly more, as in many thousands of cubic meters more than you could have contained within the flood alleviation scheme, so within the wreck. So looking at those figures, that flooding the flooding would have been through surface water or as a combination of surface water and fluvial water. And it's because modelling hasn't been completed, it's not, you can't specifically say how much of each type of water, so to speak, would have been on the outside had all the boards been in.
I get what you're saying, but however, had the flood design, the flood barrier, been working to its maximum level, it would have been up to 3.47 meters. Now, whether that would be enough to prevent flooding is up for investigation. However, it was not allowed to have the chance to maximize its capability. Therefore, surely this line from DEFRA is incorrect because the flood defence scheme was not given as much opportunity as it was able to prevent flooding.
What you said there is correct. So with all the boards in, more water would have been stored within the recreation ground. But we don't believe that that recreation ground would have held water from the river alone. That would have still come out. And I think the report that JBA completed for us provided a return period of something, I think it was between 1 in 80 and 1 in 200. So the scheme has actually only got a design of 1 in 100. So the span of return period that they think is mostly over the 100. And just looking at the amount of water that was outside, we believe that that would have overtopped from the river.
Be that as it may, the scheme wasn't, the defence scheme was not given its full capability to prevent flooding as
Accept
was
that.
designed.
Anybody else would like to come in with a question? I don't want to hog it. Councillor Stewart, thank you.
Following on from that,
Just one thing, can we bring our microphones nearer so everybody online can hear us? That's
if
great.
it's any nearer to me, I'll be eating it. Sorry, just to follow on from what you were saying. I suspect you won't be able to answer this at this stage, but on the basis that the flood prevention mechanism was fully occupied, do we know how much lower the flooding might have been in the rest of Ryde?
No, that's not. That hasn't been modelled. It's not clear about the quantity of water on the outside of the wreck that was fluvial or surface water.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary? Councillor Stewart, no? Becca, did you have your hand up? Would you like to go next?
Can you tell me why it hasn't been modelled yet? The EA.
We've had a look at the cost and the time for that. So the time to do that kind of modelling would take 12 to 18 months, something like that, and the cost would be over £100,000. And that modelling would provide a much greater level of clarity around the return period, but it's a really complicated system there with the pumping station of the environment agencies, the tidal impact, the surface network, which has not been modelled, and Southern Water have a tank, and they've got a pumping situation or pumping capability, I think, below that, and it's a really complicated area to model, and we don't believe that that model would provide the granularity that residents and the council would be looking for in order to be able to determine exactly the extent of the flooding that might have come from either fluvial water or surface water and the depth. It would give an indication, but it wouldn't provide the granularity that you would need to actually answer the questions about who might or who might not have been flooded.
John, why wasn't the modelling done before the wall was built?
There was modelling done for the scheme, so that was purely fluvial, and that's how they determined the height of wall that was needed to hold a 1 in 100 year fluvial event. So that modelling was done, but that modelling, as can often be the case, that isn't going to be of any use. That doesn't fit with the modelling requirements that JBA have indicated they need in order to provide a combined surface water and fluvial model. So they will take some information from it, but it isn't a case of being able to use that in isolation. It's a new model that's needed.
When you're going to commission that?
Sorry?
When you're going to commission it?
At the moment, we are not planning to commission that modelling because we don't, as I said earlier, because we don't believe it will provide the granularity that will confirm exactly how deep that flooding could have been on the outside or the extent of it. And we have limited resources financially, and we don't see the benefit of doing that.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. I want to push on this a bit more, if you can, John. And I'm also conscious that we've only got Southern Water for a time as well, so I want to get to them as well. you're saying this is a 1 in 100 event. We know that climate change is creating heavier downpours and more localized downpours, and looking at the islands, the island's unique geography and the factors we've got around our area in terms of sea temperature rise. We're about 25% higher than we were in 2016 currently. We are more akin to a more tropical level of sea level rise. And of course, in tropical areas, you have bigger droughts, which we're currently in a hosepipe ban, believe it or not. But also you have more intense rain. And that 1 in 100 is, to say that, oh, it's okay, it's only going to be a 1 in 100 event, I think is very naive, particularly going into the level of climate change that we are seeing, and whether it's cyclical or permanent trend, that's up for debate, but we are in this cycle at the moment. But on that point, a big factor in flooding, particularly in the Ryde area, is the tidal conditions. And on that day, it was not an exceptional tidal conditions at all. In fact, very much far from it. And there is actually a slight error in the report, because it gives in the initial JBA report, because it gives the low tide as being 1 o'clock, and that is incorrect. It's actually closer to 2 o'clock. It's 1:57. That's quite crucial, because the bulk of the rain actually came at low tide, when the tide gave the opportunity for as maximum amount of water as possible to vacate the area. And the fact that this wasn't a tidal storm as identified in the report actually is more worrying, because it shows this isn't an exceptional circumstance at all. This is quite a commonplace, potentially set of circumstances. So therefore, and to get to the bottom of what this meeting really is about, is what lessons are going to be learned. Are you, as an environment agency, more aware of the fact that this isn't an exceptional circumstance, and if things aren't handled better in the future, this incident will happen repeatedly?
So I don't start with disagreement, but I do disagree that it wasn't exceptional. So the rainfall that we had on the evening of the 24th, from about 9 o'clock through till 6, was more rain than you've seen on the Isle of Wight for over 75 years. So it really was, it genuinely was an exceptional rainfall event. So from what we've seen, we would say it was an exceptional rainfall event. In terms of climate change and the ever increasing pressure on defences, you're absolutely right. That is something that we are very aware of, but we try to incorporate climate change impacts. So for instance, for tidal schemes, we recognise that it's probably about 80 years, something like that, the expectation is that the sea level will be about 1 metre higher. So we incorporate that into designs. For the scheme at Monkton Mead, we maximise the benefits that we could from the potential from people being flooded to get the best scheme that we could. So under Treasury rules. So yes, that scheme over the next 50 years, that 1 in 100 that we see today, that standard protection you see now, that will diminish over the next 50, 100 years, and it will be less. It will have a lower standard of protection over that period. But this scheme, as it stands at the moment, is as good as we can get with the Treasury guidance that we can work to.
So given that we've got what we've got in terms of defences, is there a commitment now through your contractors that if the boards are commanded to put in place, they're put in place in their entirety, not to 40% of their capacity?
So one of the written questions from the public was about how, what's going to happen in the future. So we have installed or we have constructed some non-return valves along the bottom of the wall and on the floodboards. And one of the reasons, or the main reason why only 2 boards were put in on that night was the concern about the risk of surface water flooding. And actually there is a photograph of the contractors putting the boards in with surface water on the outside, but inside the wreck it was still dry. It hadn't come up at that stage. So surface water is a real concern for this area. So putting in these non-return valves along the wall will, I think one of the questions said, will it solve it? It won't solve it, but it will lessen the impact of surface water when the river isn't, or when the wreck is not being impounded. So that reduction in the surface water risk allows us to be more confident that we can put all of the boards in and walk away. So one of the reasons why we had only put 2 boards in is that if you've got all of the boards in and the problem ends up being a surface water one and not a fluvial one, is it takes a long time to get them back out again, whereas 2 boards are much more flexible. So to answer your question specifically, our procedures have been changed, and it is absolutely clear that the contractors cannot leave site unless all the boards are in. So the situation that we had in 23 will not happen again.
Can I ask? Because I'm a bit confused about this as well, so I need some help understanding it. You're not responsible for surface water, are you?
No, that's a local authority responsibility.
So why were you worrying about it that night or that morning?
Well, I think it was around 2019. I think there was a surface water flood in the area, and about 30 properties were flooded then. We have a kind of an overarching view around surface water. Oh, sorry, around flooding. And what we didn't want to do is to put boards in as a precautionary measure in case the river came out and flooded properties that way, and then find, because forecasts are not accurate, as we found on that evening, and then found that the river doesn't come out, but there's surface water on the outside. So that was why we didn't want to cause an issue when there was no need. So that's why we took that approach of putting in 2 boards, and then to allow us to be able to lift them out of the way if the river wasn't the problem.
Before I bring in Councillor Fuller, I'm going to open it up to other stakeholders actually, because it's their responsibility, the surface water. So I believe actually we need a surface water review with everybody around the table to come up with a solution of fixing that, because we're going to get the board straight in. So you're worrying about your fluvial and tidal, and we really need to focus on what happens on that. I call it the dry side. It wasn't that day, but we really need to work out how we're going to deal with that surface water, and we need to do it quick. So can I have commitment from people that we all get together and get that sorted, please? Because somehow we've got to get water away from those houses that are on West Hill Road. They're lower than the wall, and that wall has caused a problem for those houses. We've got to get it fixed. James.
Thank you, Chair. Just a point on surface water, and hopefully it's not a positive, but it's a way moving forward. So, and we heard some of the public questions earlier around issues around pooling in particular areas. So I think fundamental is going to be understanding exactly where those hotspots are. Obviously, understand the history to it and the length of time that those pooling areas have been around. But obviously, another step forward is obviously Southern Water are funding a post for us here on the island. So Sam's post around surface water. So I think Sam having a walk around with the residents, looking at pooling areas, identifying those hotspots is a good start. And again, as you said, it's about if the boards are in, how does the water get away elsewhere, away from the area? And so then it's looking at all the infrastructure that plays a part in that. So whether that's combined sewer, any highways, drains that are there, everything that plays a part in getting water away from the area. But I think the starting point is where are the hotspots, where are the key issues, and then it can be a joint approach, multi-agency, of looking at how we can try and address that.
I'm really, John, I know you've got a lot of answers and I appreciate that, but Southern Water, I know you've got to go soon, so I really would like to hear from you about the surface water and what we can do about it.
So we have quite a large investment programme in the area around the storm overflows. I'm sure you're all aware of the storm overflow work and a lot of the Pathfinder work that we've been doing on the island to work out what works best. The positive news is we've got about £200 million over the next 10 years for the island as a whole, and surface water separation would be a key part of that. So I think as that starts progressing, and I think the positive news is that some of the funding's just been released, if you like, so we can accelerate this to start getting this going next year properly. I think through that work, we could start working with others on the surface water management, because from our perspective, it's going to be really important that we take the surface water out of the combined system, because all flooding is bad, but if it's mixed with sewage in particular, it's almost extreme. That's the worst, and that's one of our key priorities that we need to address. But yes, I think we would be looking to work with others, I hope, as we have been doing already.
We need to look how we can get that surface water away from that area in this area, so that EA can focus on their fluvial, I love that word, fluvial, water. Can I bring in Councillor Fuller, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chair. One of the issues that I've been looking at within my role as the council's member that sits on the SRFCC is more funding going into surface water management. I think that is essential. I think one of the things we've seen in the last 5 years is a lot of the flooding that has come from surface water flooding, and that definitely needs to be addressed. I know the guys around the table here aren't in a position to do that. A lot of that comes from government, and I think government is waking up to the need to do that. So I welcome that view. I think the issue that I have is really for John, and I hate to give you a hard time about this, but being a former local councillor down at Monkton Mead as well, the flooding that we've had in that area there is a history of flooding. We've seen a new pumping station, or a few years ago, we saw a new pumping station created, but there are still problems arising. And what concerns me is we're hearing from the Environment Agency that the modelling isn't taking place because it's costing an excessive amount of money. Well, surely, from my perspective, it's important to make sure that areas are resistant to flooding, and that modelling and that work needs to take place before schemes are put in place and addressed. And I really feel that it's important that when we are looking to providing flood alleviation schemes, as we are in Monkton Mead and in other areas as well, that we look at the whole and we work with all of the agencies. At the moment, there are so many agencies doing different things, and sometimes you'll ask one body, well, why is this happening? And you'll hear back, well, that's not our fault, that is Southern Water. And it's great to have all of us around the table this evening, because we can't put the blame onto other people. So that is fantastic. But, you know, from my point of view, the money isn't coming through as well from government as it should do. And I think what I would like to see is much more partner working to make sure that that happens, and that the schemes that we put in place across the island to address flooding is supported by all agencies. I know you do that at the moment, but sometimes for local members, for local residents groups, going to one or two agencies and being told, well, that's not our responsibility, isn't really acceptable. And that happens across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Anybody else who hasn't spoken would like a chance to speak? Councillor Cameron.
On development, we continue to see buildings on our precious greenfield areas rather than on brownfield sites. These greenfield sites historically soaked off runoff. Development sites are not consistently or forced to be maintained post-occupation. No developer money has been put aside for dealing with future flooding issues that occur after these developments are built. Could that be something that people could look at?
Okay, who's that directed at mostly? James.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take that one. So yeah, it's a really good question around new development, and sometimes there is a perception that new development can be the problem when it comes to surface water drainage, when actually a lot of the time it can have a positive impact. I know it sounds a bit perverse, but certainly the schemes we see coming through planning now, if you looked at a similar scheme 5-10 years ago, they're chalk and cheese in terms of the surface water infrastructure that's being put forward. We adopted the SUDS SPD just over a year ago now. That is now starting to have impact in terms of the schemes we're coming forward. So what we're seeing is a greater level of surface water infrastructure in new development. So I think from a design perspective, we're on the right path. I totally understand your point around kind of financially what happens if something goes wrong. So if there is a flood event, how does the developer have to pay for it? I guess the challenge you have with something like that is demonstrating that it was the fault of that development that something flooded. And often if a development's been designed and the greenfield runoff rate at the current moment is designed to be not exceeded when it rains again, then it's very difficult to then say, well, actually the development's the fault because the water's being held in the site, sometimes attenuation, etc., etc. I think the key point there is around maintenance. And so obviously when these schemes go in,
Can we keep it? Can we keep it kind of to Monkton Mead around that question? If that's
in
okay.
general,
Yeah.
So
It's about Ryde, Monkton Mead.
it's maintenance. So I think if we're thinking around Ryde and new developments coming forward in Ryde, if they do have surface water infrastructure as part of that, obviously the planning, we have a role in making sure those schemes are maintained through the life of the development. It's certainly something that we see quite often in that schemes don't necessarily get maintained, but that is something we can do, we can enforce against. So we do have the mechanism to pick that up.
Councillor Churchman.
Yes, I want to go back to basics. I'm sure residents are delighted to hear that they won't get flooded again, but that doesn't mitigate the fact they were flooded and now can't get insurance. What I want to know is why on the night of the 23rd, we were given a warning of torrential rain, and it was a stark warning. That area has been prone to flooding in the past, and yet nobody came down to check those boards. And as far as I know, nobody arrived at all until something like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And I would like to know, and I'm sure the residents would like to know, why. Thank you.
I think that's aimed at you, John.
Okay. The duty officers we had, the people who were on duty that night, the information we got from the flood forecasting service, it's in the report that I wrote just after the flooding. That wasn't the forecast that they were given, or the forecast that they were working to, or the forecast that they determined how many people we needed to get out. So from memory from the report, I think it was expected to be up to maybe 10 millimeters or 15 millimeters to midnight, and then maybe 30 more between midnight and 6 a.m. on the 25th. And it turned out that it was about 10 or 15 up to midnight, but it was more like 70 in the period between midnight and 6. So it was at least double what we were working to, what we were planning for, and that's the reason why the boards weren't put in the night before. That is the reason why we at that time we only had one of our island contractors' gangs out, and so we called them, but actually those two boards did actually go in before the river had come out of bank. So although there were delays and we were working to a forecast that was very different to the reality, the two boards did go in before the river had come out before it had broken its banks and come out into the recreation ground. So the difficulty, which Councillor Blake was talking about, the two boards and could we have got 5 in, the difficulty was that even at that stage, we did not believe that that the river would come out so far and flood to the level it was, the level that it did. And so therefore we had other demands on those limited resources over in Newport. And the duty officer at the time took the view that they could get to Newport, and if the situation deteriorated further in the Ryde catchment that they would be able to get back and insert the remaining boards in time. And due to road closures, etc., they were unable to get back and put in those remaining boards.
Okay, can I go to Southern Water? Because I've got a question. So we spoke about 1 in 100 years protection, etc. So your combined sewers that we have here on the island, especially obviously in Ryde, Monkton, Mead, is 1 in 30. Yeah. So are we going to do anything to actually give more capacity? Because that seems very, very low.
We actually have increased some of the capacity from the pumping station. So we kind of doubled the capacity of the pumping up to the sewage works, which should make a big difference. The real way we need to be releasing capacity is by taking surface water out, because we think the capacity is really being taken up by rain. And as you've already mentioned, because of the climate change, the answer isn't just to try to keep building bigger. The answer is to stop the surface water getting in there in the first place. So that's going to be the key focus for us. But as part of this 10-year program that I referred to, some elements might require capacity or storage or smarter controls of the way the sites operate to hold some of the flows back. And that will all be looked at through that process. But the real way for us to deliver capacity is by taking the surface water out in the first place.
With the best respect in the world, I've been listening about that for quite a long time, so I need to start seeing some tangible stuff going on. But if you're committing to get around the table and let's talk about it, then I'm happy to start that conversation very soon.
That's right. And it was only this month that we've had the funding confirmed that we can make a start. So we'd be looking at that in the next financial year, but absolutely ready to start those conversations, working with people jointly.
We've got some work to do there, haven't we?
Yeah.
So I look forward to working with you. Councillor Stewart.
You'll be pleased now I have 3 things, and the first one's just about being answered, which is what has happened in those 2 years about surface water, because we all know the proportion of surface water to sewage is so high that if you can take any of the surface water out, you will reduce it substantially. So it sounds like nothing's happened as yet. I'm not criticising at this stage. I'm sure other people will do that quite happily, but it doesn't sound anything has happened as yet. It doesn't sound as if anything will happen until at least the middle of 2026. Is there any way of moving some of that forward? You've installed water butts. Sorry, apologies. This is for Southern Water. You have installed water butts in other places. I'm not sure how they've been selected, but it doesn't seem to be on the basis of the riskiest areas. And of course, you also have rainfall diversion from roofs. So is there any way in which you can, any way in which there can be a system of surface water diversion to take place reasonably rapidly? Because obviously at the moment we're facing a winter, and if nothing has changed, then the amount of surface water which might come out is going to be exactly the same. That's one question. I'll come back with the 2 other things, not necessarily for yourself.
So
Chris, do you want to take that?
I'm happy to take that. So you may be aware, but we go through a 5-yearly price review, and that was part of the reason we were just needing to go through that last price review. So we're now in the new investment period, which started in April. It's not that we won't be starting the work until next year, but at this point, we've just, as I said, just had funding confirmed. The next stage now will be to be working through what the options are, where the issues are, and how we can best improve it. I should probably point out the priority for us has to be around spills to the environment, because that's on the basis of the funding. But yes, it can start now, but it will be a multi-year process, I'm afraid. That's where it is. The work that we've done, you mentioned some of the water butts and other work, that was very much part of the pilots, the testing that informed that price review that has just kicked in. And I'm sure people have seen bills. Unfortunately, bills do go up, but that's partly around, it's about funding these kind of improvements and finding some other areas. I would hope there'd be some quick wins that we could pick up along the way and get to focus on those first.
Chris, part of this money, is it the permeable driveways, etc.? Will that be part of it?
It may well be. I think that's been part of the pilot that we were testing. I don't think I can confirm exactly what's in it because, as I said, we've just literally had the funding confirmed. But that will be part of the consideration. I think it's all about trying to slow the flow, find alternative routes for the way that the surface water can percolate away and take it away. So yes, part of the solution might well be the permeable driveways. I can't say absolutely it is, but it's part of that consideration.
It's a very big catchment area, so there's a lot of work to do, isn't there? So
There is.
thank you for that. I just want to ask Adam, because I know you've got to go in a minute. So Adam, can we arrange for the flood group to have a walk around where the storage tank is and look at the stuff in the cabinet and go to the one at Appy as well, please? Could we sort that out?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we can do another one of a tour of both. Yeah, I'll get in touch with me this week, Karen. We get it arranged.
Thank you very much for your commitment for that, because we need to get that sorted. So I don't know if you'll more Southern Water, but thank you very much. Unless anybody else has got a question for Southern Water before they go. Yeah, Councillor Fuller.
Thank you. I couldn't really miss the opportunity to talk about SUD schemes. We had £3 million invested for SUD schemes at Gurnard. That money never was spent on actually achieving anything in that community. What concerns me is with that kind of, well, I'm talking about SUD schemes generally across the island. If Southern Water are going to commit themselves to SUD schemes, I also want to see people like Island Roads doing exactly the same thing as well, because at the end of the day, the discussions all fell apart and we got nowhere. You know, the schemes that was going to be put in place in my area just didn't happen. We had roads up for months in my area. Nothing happened. There was no project management coming from Southern Water. It was a total cock-up. It really was. What I would like to see is that if we are going to invest in such schemes, that money and plans are actually put in place before anything is put forward, because otherwise we don't want to have the embarrassment of going back to our funders and saying, well, actually, there's no point us bidding for funds if we're not going to spend them on schemes that are going to help to address surface water drainage across the island.
Okay, so Island Road, you would like to speak to you about that. Can we keep it to Ryde Monk? Because that's what we're here to talk about.
I think the question was about Gurnard. So I'll need to answer it in that perspective. So the work that Island Roads did was to try and ensure that the council weren't left with a number of liabilities as a result of these schemes. So Water Industry Act makes it very clear that Southern Water should fully fund any separation of their surface water from their combined systems. The reason the scheme didn't progress is because there wasn't agreement achieved in terms of the ongoing maintenance of what they were proposing. The proposal from Southern Water included underground systems and something that needed maintaining on a very frequent basis in perpetuity. And that would have been a cost liability to the authority to pick up. And Island Roads' advice to the authority at the time was to get all of that secured and in place so it didn't become a cost risk for managing the maintenance of it going forward on the council. I think the council need to be very clear that the Water Industry Act places that obligation on the water company when it comes to separation, and we need to make sure that there isn't a risk transfer to the council when they go through this process.
Just we need to work on that relationship then, don't we? Councillor Stewart, was it you finished with Southern Water?
I've moved on.
Yeah.
It's to take it wider. Everything we've talked about this evening is mitigation. How do we deal with this water? When you actually look through the reports, what you see is that the problem is also prevention. At the top of the catchment area, the soil moisture deficit didn't actually change that much, which basically meant that you weren't getting infiltration of what is extremely heavy rainfall, exceptional rainfall. but there are mechanisms by which you can change the amount of water that goes into the soil, both by soft methodologies, which are, vegetative, or by hard ones, as referred to by James Brewer. So the question is, and I don't see it in any of these reports, how are we going to help prevent it? We have seen in other parts of the UK where woodland has been planted, for instance, above threatened communities to reduce the amount of water coming down. What it does, what those mechanisms will do is reduce the peak flow, and it is the peak flow which is the flooding. So what mechanisms, and I'm not sure where this comes to, and this is one of the problems, who is actually going to be helping with this type of flood prevention?
Could you help with that, Natasha, please? Because I think there's a lot of partners that will come together, and I think that would come under you, really.
Yep, certainly. So as I set out earlier, we do now all have regular meetings as risk management authorities. We meet on a quarterly basis. Through that process, we go through what I showed you on screen earlier, the prevention activities, the avoidance activities, and the activities to prevent known risks, and then communicate. In terms of looking at that wider upper catchment risk, there was a 2015 Ryde surface water management plan and study that was taking place. It had a number of recommendations in it. There was also the 2022 Section 19 report that had a number of recommendations, and then the more recent one, all of which refer to surface water and managing upstream surface water. One of the key things that we want to do to really ensure that we're dealing with not just the local surface water issue with that upper catchment, is review the surface water sources as a risk management group with all authorities involved to make sure that we are looking at that from an end-to-end water management situation.
Thank you. So does anybody else have a question? Then we're going to go to actually the things that were picked up in the Section 19 report. So if I go to Councillor Blake and then you, yeah. Or did you want to pick up on Natasha's point? So yeah, you carry on.
Thank you, Chair. So there's just a couple of bits in response to Councillor Stewart's question as well around how we're managing the Monkton Mead catchment. So obviously one of the things we've got in the IPS is a specific policy around the Monkton Mead catchment and making sure that anything that occurs in that area effectively is betterment. So you'll have a current runoff rate into the Monkton Mead. Anything coming forward has got to effectively reduce that. So when we're talking about those peak flows and what happens in those exceptional rainfall events, anything coming forward has got to effectively reduce that. So if schemes do come forward, then we've got a policy, get the IPS through, that we'll be able to use for Monkton Mead specifically to make sure that we're not effectively making that better, not worse, if that makes sense. And that's through things like we talked about. So whether it's permanent paving, ground infiltration, attenuation on site, slowing the flow, all that kind of thing. And I think just one final thing from this is something that Southern Water have actually changed in probably the last 12 months. So historically, a development would put both its foul and surface water in the combined sewer. So that was the kind of way of dealing with it, basically. That doesn't happen now. So if a scheme comes forward, the surface water doesn't go into the combined sewer because Southern Water won't accept it. So they have to find another solution for that surface water. That's either going to a water course or through filtration. If they don't have another solution, then the development can't go forward. And we've got a couple of examples where that is biting, and that is happening at the moment with schemes where they can't put their surface water in the combined sewer. There isn't anywhere else to get rid of it, so they can't move forward. That's really important.
And thank you for reminding me about that in the island planning strategy, that we do have a specific bit for Ryde, Monkton, Mead. It's such a long time since we've spoken about it, I have forgotten. So thank you for that.
Final question.
Nick, your final question, and then I'm going to start going to the Section 19 recommendations. Okay, throwing it up.
I'm dropping that. It's not important. We'll come back to it. Just to follow on, and I'm really grateful for both of those answers, and at least we know something of what's going on. But what I'm talking about doesn't seem to come into discussion at all, which is actually changing the infiltration of water at the top end of any of these areas. There is one here, but the island is prone to this because it has very short, very steep river valleys. So we have this problem all over the island. I see it on my side and everywhere else, but we're sticking to Right, Monkton Mead, of course. So is there any process, we mentioned obviously the Surface Water Management Group, whereby that can take into account other parts of the area, other landowners as well?
Do you like to?
It is part of that wider review of the original 2015 surface water management plan that we need to look at that upper catchment and then encourage the community to do what they can on their private land as well as what other landowners can do. And I believe, James, have you got some follow up on that?
Yeah, thank you. There are natural flood management schemes and grants available, so I think that's probably where you're getting at, Councillor Stewart, in terms of that, whether it's planting or whatever, or using land to effectively hold water. And there's been examples of that recently on the Eastern Yar. There is actually a project the Wildlife Trust are doing on the Monkton Mead at the moment around trying to take water out and store it in land rather than having it in the brook. So there are schemes. I think the EA have grants, separate grants for that, and they have officers who are kind of responsible for that and working with landowners through the NFU as well. So there is stuff going on.
Sorry, did you just say there's something going on in Ryde Monkton Mead?
Right upstream, so it's a really small piece of land and it's just holding some water on a bit of Wildlife Trust lands.
Could you go through that with me? Because I had no idea about that. And actually, that's in the catchment area, and that's really important that residents know about these things. So thank you for that. Anybody else? And then I'm going to, are you, obviously, Councillor Blake. Then we're going to wrap it up.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted a couple of questions to Island Roads if possible. So a bit of myth busting potentially, but obviously there's a lot of questions coming from residents around the cleaning of gullies and things like that. So to that end, when you do the cleaning of gullies, are you satisfied that the programme you've got is fit for purpose, essentially?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Blake. Keeping it specific to the Monkton Mead area we're talking about, we empty those gullies on a monthly frequency, which is quite a high frequency for gully maintenance. We record the amount of silt that we're collecting from the gully pots each visit, and we're never finding anything that suggests that the capacity of those gully pots is being exceeded. So we're very comfortable that the frequency of emptying is adequate, and we're very comfortable that it wasn't a contributor to any of the flooding. And that is further supported by the fact that there are reports of water coming back up out of the gullies. You know, a gully will work both directions. So if the sewer systems below have become surcharged with the excessive water, then they will come back up through the gully. We were witnessing that happening, which tells me that actually the gullies and the drainage that we look after was not the cause of the flooding. The other difficulty in that area around Monkton Mead is that the majority of the drainage is what's known as a combined sewage system. So the surface water goes into Southern Water's Falm drainage system and then goes to the pumping station. And that is beyond the remit of the Highways Authority and Island Roads. So we look after the gully pot and the piece of pipe that connects from there down onto the sewer in the road. I think there's a lot of dynamics here that people need to understand, particularly hydraulic profiling. You know, if you have a pipe under the ground which is surcharged and under pressure, it will not allow the water from above to flow into it. The water above needs to have higher pressure to get into that sewer. Get that equilibrium position where the gully just looks like it's not working. And then when that surcharge gets higher than the water pressure above, the water starts to come back up through the gully. And that's typical of gullies. And as you've given me the opportunity, we get a lot of people phoning us and saying the gully's not working because it's half or 3/4 full of water. They're designed to be that way. They need to be that way, particularly when they're on a combined sewer, because that's the trap that stops the smells coming back out of the sewer. So it's a bit like the toilet WC you have, that there's water in the bottom essentially to stop the smells coming back up out the sewer system. So our gullies, the majority of them, are designed to sit 3/4 full of water. So saying that there's water in the gully isn't a suggestion that it's not working. What we do suffer from a lot in flood conditions is the significant amount of water that travels across the surface and washes loose debris, particularly at this time of year when you've got lots of leaves off the trees. They very quickly flow with the torrent of water, and they get sucked into the top of the gully. The gully grate on the top is actually designed that way to stop larger debris going into the pipe system. And then the sump below that is the silt trap that picks up the finer sands and stones that get washed in. And that is all designed to prevent that debris getting into the main pipe work, where it becomes a lot more difficult for us to deal with.
Thank you, Steve. I've got I was going to bring up at this point, and you've raised it actually on the conclusion recommendations of the Section 19 report. Of the 7 questions, 5 of them are it's not possible to determine due to without undertaking further hydraulic modelling work. So that says to me surely that needs to be done. So you know, from what I took earlier, you're sort of not prepared to do that. Can I say if your consultants are saying that it's not possible to answer these crucial questions, how can we as the members of the public be satisfied that lessons have been learned and we understand fully what's happening to stop it happening again?
Mr. O'Flynn.
So modelling will provide you with a clearer answer. So modelling from the flood event we were talking about earlier, or that modelling. What it won't do, or certainly won't do from an environmental perspective, is change what you've got. Because like I said earlier, what you've got is the best scheme that we can get from Treasury. So Monkton Mead currently, from a fluvial perspective, has got the best scheme it can get. So doing modelling isn't going to get anything more for you. And that alongside what I said earlier about the level of granularity and what it will tell you, it won't change what we can do. So what we've done is tried to help alleviate some surface water flooding when the river's not out, and we've changed our procedures to ensure that regardless of the resource pressures we are under, all boards will be in, and there's not much more else. There's not much more that we can do, and modelling isn't going to help us achieve that either, because the funding just isn't available.
I don't want to keep going over the same point, but it is probably the most salient point out of all this paperwork. Is, I mean, just take question E, for instance. Did this event exceed the design parameters? And we don't know that. So how is people, the residents out there, going to be confident that every time it rains, you've got the situation under hand? Or that, otherwise, I'll be worried every time the weather comes on. You know, is this rain going to flood my house? And you can't even say that the design you've got would even meet that. What you claim is or what is stated as being an exceptional event. I mean, that is severely up for debate. If this is not an exceptional event, is what's there even sufficient for that? And that, I say that it seems to be the most salient point. And if you're not prepared to be able to answer that question competently, then surely the competency of the Environment Agency is up for question.
Right, sir, respond.
I guess I can only go back to what I've said. So the scheme was modelled at the time. So that modelling, fluvial modelling, identified that the height of those walls and the combination of gravity outflow and the pumps would provide a 1 in 100-year standard protection. The rainfall was greater than you've ever had on the island. So if that doesn't make it exceptional, I don't know what would. So the records go back to 1949, the rainfall records. They were absolutely blitzed from the event on the 25th of October. So that it really is an event you've not experienced on the island before for a very long time. Now, I think that would categorise it as exceptional. In terms of, do we know the standard protection that the scheme has exactly? Well, both the Section 19 that you commissioned and the review that we commissioned both identified that event was touching around the 1 in 100 or significantly more. So the preliminary draft work that we've done to identify the amount of water that was out, how much more that flood storage area could take, all leads to, from my professional position, leads to a position that scheme does provide something around the 1 in 100 year event, which is extremely rare, and carrying out modelling to specifically say whether it was a 1 in 90 or a 1 in 150 isn't going to change the way that we operate that defence, because there is no other way of operating it. So we've tried to help with surface water, and there's not much more we could do.
One more question on that one. Have you even got a back of the fag packet calculation as to how close, had the full flood defence been put in on that night, how close were we to making that flood preventable?
So I have personally done a back of the fag packet type calculation. So, and I've taken some of the areas outside, not all of them, but some of them, and I've used the drone footage that came from the Island Echo photograph. I haven't included the properties that were flooded across Ryde, and I've included a very small depth across the roads. And there was something like 10,000 cubic meters that wouldn't have fitted inside the recreation ground. And that's not all the floodwater either. So on a very rough assessment, there is a significant amount of water that would not have fitted inside that recreation ground storage area.
I'll ask one more question. I'm going to start wrapping up. So how many times can that wall be used at full capacity before it isn't good like, does it have a lifetime?
It will have. I can't remember what it is in the design. It would probably be somewhere between 150 and 100. There are sheet piles within the wall, and the brick wall is actually a cladding material. So those sheet piles are not. Those sheet piles deteriorate particularly around the coast, where you get the wet and dry from the tidal situation. They're not exposed to that. So I would imagine those piles are probably 75 years plus in terms of what a designer would guarantee you. Reality is they're probably a lot more than that. So that scheme's good for in terms of structural stability, perhaps say another 7,500 years. In terms of its ability to hold the water, obviously with climate change, that is going to diminish over time, as will of course the surface water impact on the outside, which will also get more, will get bigger and bigger.
This area I'd like to understand a bit more, actually, please. So these, just to go through, Natasha Dix, the section 19 recommendations and how you keep everybody to account on those. Could you explain, I know we touched on it, but could you just explain how that works again, please? I think it's really important, because actually we're led to believe that not much was doing, and actually I do know a lot has been done now.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, since the 2023 flooding, we have done a lot of work to change the way that the Isle of Wight Council, the local lead flood authority. Sorry, can you not hear me? I do apologise. Since the 2023 flooding across the island, we have reviewed the way that, as the local lead flood authority, we work with our risk management partners and the way that we work across the council. One of the primary things that we have put together to help each other track where we are with recommendations that have come from the flood management reports is a section 19 recommendations tracker that covers every section 19 report that's been written since 2014. We meet on a quarterly basis as risk management groups to make sure that that is updated against all of the actions within that tracker, and that we are aware of what each other are doing in those areas, and ensuring that as risk management agencies we are working collaboratively to look at prevention, to look at reducing risk, and to look at making sure that we are working across all of those risk management groups to lead to a better future. So our last meeting was in October, and then we will be meeting again in
December, if you wanted an update at that point in time on where we are with that tracker and Monkton Mead specifically.
I think it goes a bit further than that. I think the public in my ward deserve to know what's going on, how people are being, and I thank everybody that's doing that with you actually, because that's really, really important. But what I'd like to see is that project tracker that you've finally given to me today. Can we have that in a performance part of the agenda going forward, so it can be in public as much as it can, and so that the public can have confidence that that is being tracked, and actually how that progression is happening, what needs to be worked on, and what's been done.
Yes, absolutely. We can, following our next quarterly meeting, make sure that that tracker is updated and then becomes part of the performance part of the agenda for this committee.
I appreciate that. I'm just going to say any questions, because what I want to do is now bring in some recommendations. Is that okay? Vanessa, very quick. We've got some more to do.
Not a question, just to point out, perhaps we ought to start running a campaign to stop people using so much water. Prevention is better than cure. Every time we lay a bit of concrete, we push water onto either into a gully, a drain, or onto a greenfield site. So we have got to stop using so much water. We have an antiquated infrastructure of 5-inch pipes nearly everywhere. And now we're trying to force them to cope with water for which they were never intended. So, and I really am quite serious, Chair. We should start running a campaign educating the public. This is what happens when you use too much water. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for your input. Thank you, Vanessa. So I've just made some notes about recommendations. So can we just go through those and see if we've got some consensus? So I'd like to see some education. You did a very good one on roads when you implemented the new smart roads with the sensors. I'd like to see some education on drains actually about things that you've spoken about. I think that's really important. People understand how they work. I'd really like to see that. I'd really like to reinstate the flood group once every 3 months, so that the flood group and the wider community can really understand all of this stuff that's going on, because they have actually been very, very good at resilience in the area and been working really hard on that. So I really want everybody to work with that. We haven't actually spoken about this, but I would like us to write to DEFRA about the PFR grants and how hard it was to get for people that didn't have the money up front to do stuff. I think that's really, really important. I'd like that to happen. We certainly need a surface water review. And we spoke about that, and I think we've got consensus that we're going to be looking at that. So can we get that done? And certainly look at that upper catchment area of 11 kilometre square. So a conversation with Flood RE about getting insurance for people that haven't got it. I think, again, that's really important. We certainly need to look at the drains, and I think that's part of the education as well, about how they work. I'd like to see the diary of when they've been done. Yeah, I didn't understand about the silt thing, I have to say. So I'd be quite interested to see if roads have different silt, like Cornwall Street, when it blows in, it's up, etc. Okay. We need a beach sediment review on the drainage on the seafront. I hope people are going to agree with that. Hydraulic tidal review. I know what you've said, but I'm still going to add it to it because I'm going to push my luck with that one, John. And also, I'd really like to see the protocol on the Simeon wreck. What will happen? Like the boards going in.
Do you mean in terms of how when the river reaches a certain level, what we're going to do and when?
Yeah, because I've never seen that.
Have you not? I've got that here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we've spoken about the project tracker for the performance. It's really important that's in public. So does anybody else want to add anything else? Councillor Cameron.
I would like to add with the roads where they teach the residents how to fix their street, how to report floods that they see if they see a blocked drain, that they can actually report it themselves. just as an
I
education
think
side of things.
people are quite good in my area doing that, but yeah, maybe we can look at that again if that's okay. I think just look at the education part. Like I said, when you do videos, they're very good, and I think maybe just look at that part so we can educate people as well. Thank you. Councillor Phillip, we're just going to.
I was going to touch upon the same thing. I think education, because again, we've looked at the agencies, we've cross-examined the agencies, but I think Vanessa makes a really good point in sometimes us as residents have to take responsibility for doing what we do in our areas. Things like drop curbs and the impact that has, surfacing driveways, and the impact that has, not clearing semi-permeable drives as well. That is another issue that helps to increase the level of surface water drainage that goes into the combined sewers. I think I would like to see a much more robust education system going out to local residents to tell local residents what they can do, as well as all the agencies around the table, because I think that's really important, because we all have to take responsibility for the problem that's arising more and more by surface water. And I think if that was properly managed better, we could mitigate against a lot of the flooding that happens across the island. So yes, education, absolutely. And whether we can also talk to people like the planners as well, because again, we often see planning applications coming up. I think the rule says that anything larger than 5 square meters of permanent surfacing on a driveway, you require planning permission for. A lot of residents aren't aware of that, and I think they don't understand the unintended consequences of having that put in place. So again, working with our planning departments on trying to highlight and provide the proper communications is something that we could probably benefit from. So I'm all up with what Vanessa was saying. So thank you, Vanessa.
That's great. Thank you very much. So, so we've got education on there. I think maybe that part of that group that you get everybody together. I think maybe everybody can have a look at what we can do to help with that. Anything else? Can we just agree on those? Because we're going to run out of time. We've got some more stuff to go on the agenda now. You're going to second it? You're going to propose it? I propose it. You second it. Everybody in agreement? Thank you very much. Have you got all of that? Very important that we track that as well. Thank you very much. You don't have to stay now if you don't want to. Yeah, bye. Can we just have a break for a couple of minutes, just so I get some water, if that's okay, we change, yeah. Thank you to the public for coming.
believe through this committee that the scheme on the island seemed to have stopped, stalled, whatever the phrase may be. And I was asked to look at why this may be the case. Having looked through where we are with the scheme, it would appear that currently we only have one contractor on board, JJ Crump, who can offer the works which are required under the scheme. So having looked at that, I've reviewed the onboarding criteria, which was approved in 2013 by Cabinet, which seemed a little bit outdated. So I've looked at that, and we've come up with a revised onboarding process, which is very similar to being used in Hampshire and Southampton. And not only does it make it easier for companies or contractors to onboard onto our scheme, it also looks at the works that those contractors can actually provide for the scheme, where previously that information wasn't necessarily available. It also makes sure that new qualifications such as the PAS 2030 qualification, which is around electrical installations, and also the National Register of Trusted Traders scheme, where they need to be a member of, is recognised. So the revised onboarding policy is at Appendix 1, and the previous one's at Appendix 2. I believe, and I have spoken to a recent contractor who wishes to onboard and allowed him to compare the two systems, and he was much happier with the new system. And it also does reduce officer time in trying to onboard those companies. So therefore, we've also looked at reducing the onboarding fee from £500 down to £200. Thank you, Chair. I think that probably covers most of the facts within my report.
Thank you very much for your work you've done. We brought that up quite not that long ago, so I applaud that it's come forward very quickly. So well done. Would you like to? Sorry, I'm going to go to Councillor Cameron, because it's Councillor Cameron that actually brought it to our attention. Thank you.
The full flex onboarding is very important to the poor and vulnerable island residents. The total number put forward by the Footprint Trust, Future Isle of Wight and Green Isle of Wight show that 202 households qualify for work under this scheme and are waiting for approved contractors. Furthermore, aerial thermal survey of over 1,000 properties in Ventnor show that they too could qualify under the IMD bands, and residents can be contacted later in the year to help them apply for available funding. Isle of Wight, Green Isle of Wight are the delivery partner for LEAP on the island and meet people that qualify for this and other funding. They also have existing relationships with mainland contractors who are qualified to do this work and are currently delivering under these schemes on the mainland. The companies that have been working,
Councillor Cameron, have you got a question? Because we're actually debating this now rather than making statements.
No, I haven't got a question actually. No, I just think it's very good.
Very much. Anybody else? Councillor Sturt.
I have got a question, but I agree with Tali, it is very good. The question is, and it relates back to previous scrutiny committee, which some of the people here were on. Do we have any idea of the sort of numbers of skilled people that this might bring to the island, or developing on the island?
Thanks, Councillor Stewart. I think it's probably difficult to appreciate what those exact numbers may be. What we do know is there are a number of contractors who have contacted the council over recent times wishing to onboard. And once this criteria, if you determine to approve it, those people will be contacted and requested to onboard. And maybe at that point, we'll be able to give you a better idea of how many people will be qualified to be able to provide this work at that time. It's sort of a sit on the fence answer, Councillor Stewart, but I really don't have that answer for you tonight.
Councillor Fuller, thank you.
Thank you. I think I should just declare that I am a director of the Footprint Trust, and I'd like that to go on record, please. But it's
Are they going to apply to do the? Are they going to apply?
No, but the Footprint Trust do advise people about energy efficiency and where to go for grants. And because I am a trustee of that charity, then I need to declare that here. But I am absolutely welcome. I welcome this. I think one of the issues that we have on the island is because of the age of our housing stock on the island, the desperation to get extra grant funding to allow work to happen is essential. You know, our properties are old; they need to be properly looked after, and anything that gives us more power to do that, the better. So I very much welcome the report. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Fuller. Has anybody got anything to say about it that they want changed, or they're quite happy? I'll propose that then. Who would like to second that? Thank you, councillor Fuller. And by affirmation, are we okay for that? Well done for bringing that so quickly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.
Or you've had to wait all that time just to, I'm not having many questions, but it's very good. Oh, on to paper B, which is the Isle of Wight Festival Licence Extensions. Now, we have got pink papers in here. If people would like to speak about anything in those pink papers, we need to go into closed session. Does anybody want to speak about anything in the, because there's things in there that we cannot speak about? You happy with that? They know not to?
I did notice in the report that they said that we don't charge as much for the Isle of Wight Festival as people on the mainland.
But we can't talk about specifically.
Sorry?
You can talk generically, but don't talk about the figures and stuff.
Oh, right. Well,
Because then that will go into close and you can ask those questions.
leave it at that.
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So anybody go on? Councillor Stewart, would you like to?
I'm sorry, I'll keep this very short. Lots of information here, you know, obviously with reference to how we approach this. Has there been any consideration of changes in attendance figures?
Can Alex Minns, welcome. Not said hello. Thank you for coming along and waiting your turn. Would you like to answer that?
There hasn't been any indication of the changes in attendance. The attendance tends to fluctuate depending on what bands we've got. But Kevin will be aware through his licensing activities that the festival is limited to a certain number, which I think is 70,000.
Really sorry. Did you want to present the report?
I'd
Or are
like
you
to-
happy just for oh, gee, you just want the questions on there. I've just gone straight in.
Yeah, would you like me to do that, Chair?
Go on.
Yeah,
You've
okay.
done a-
I'll
you've done
try
a
and keep
paper,
it
you
quite
might as well.
simple considering how late
Really
in the evening
sorry.
we were. That's perfectly okay. So what you've got in front of you then is an agreement to look at the extension of the Mead Festival contract. Members will be aware that we've had a land hire agreement with the festival since 2002. It was initially a 10-year agreement, and then through COVID became a one-off one-year agreement, and now we currently have a 5-year agreement. We're now seeking approval to return to a 10-year agreement once again, which is what we previously had. And the purpose of that is to try and provide additional security for both us, the council, and the festival organiser to give us that longer agreement. The recommendation is to agree the terms set out in the report for an extension of 7 years to the Isle of Wight music, for the agreement licence, with a further 3-year option with the Isle of Wight Festival Limited to stage the Isle of Wight Festival for the period 2026 to 2033 inclusive, and to delegate the authority to the Strategic Director of Community Services to conclude the details of that licence. More than happy to ask any questions about the detail, although as Karen has indicated, we probably need to go into session if we're going to discuss anything in the pink paper.
Yeah, I was going to ask
Briefly,
something else.
sorry.
Carry
Okay.
on, Councillor Stewart.
I apologise for not having let you spoken first. It's always much easier if we have officers telling us actually the realities behind it. You mentioned that and I'm going back to the figure, so I'm not going to change the question. It's page 151, which is white, not purple, and it's paragraph 11 about an annual fee. And I'm just wondering, in 2021, was the figure 70,000 or was it lower? And if it's higher now than it was then, is there a change to the approach that we take?
If the figures relating to the number of people attend, Councillor Stewart? Yes. I can answer that very briefly and very quickly. The premise license, which was issued in perpetuity, allows up to 89,999 on the site at any one time. That is what the license is being granted for. Every year, 120 days before the event manager or the event organizer has to submit to the licensing department their event management plan, which sets out the expected numbers for that year's event, and within that, then the resources that will be provided to ensure that it's then safe to manage for those numbers. That's how it works. The premises license is there. There is a fee that is attached to that premises license depending on the maximum numbers of the premise licenses allowed to have, which is totally separate to the land hire agreement. That answer the question, Councillor Stewart. In relation to the numbers, were you looking to see if the numbers went from, say, 55 to 70,000, whether the actual fee that the council charged the land hire increases? Was that where you alluded to?
Thank you for reading my mind. That is exactly the direction I was going.
I'll leave Alex to answer that because that sets under his remit here.
Alex?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The fee isn't linked to the number of people that attend currently. That is one of the suggestions. It's not something that we considered last time when this was presented. We thought we wanted to enter into, although it does relate to what is in the pink paper, contradictory to what Vanessa was saying. The current fee that we agreed last time is reflective of market rates. So we are not cheaper than any other festival. We are right in the middle on the average. We have to bear in mind, as it says in the paper, that we don't own all of the land. That's the most significant thing here. We only own about 30%, I think, of the total land that the festival organisers use to deliver the festival, which is very different than other festivals around the country. So
Our bit is like Sea Close area, isn't it? Yeah. Sea Close and the tennis courts.
Yes.
That area. Okay, sorry. Sorry to steal your thunder. Colin?
Just a bit of clarity for the committee that this is just minor changes to a land hire agreement on the public realm area of the festival for the main agreement that was made in 2023. We're not in a position where we can revisit the land hire agreement. We're not in a position we can revisit the agreement that was made in 2023. We've agreed that. We're just looking at extension based on the minor changes and the agreement that we've made already.
To say that it does bring in, what was it, 16, we think about 16 million to the island, etc. So, you know, there is added value there, I think, as well for our economy. So, remember that, right?
You have, Chair. We haven't done that economic study for many years, so that figure has been inflated up to take into consideration where we are now, but it is in that range, yes.
People use Airbnbs and hotels, etc., to stay, and they don't all go on site. So, Councillor Bacon.
Thank you. My question relates to, well, paragraphs 13 and 22 refer to a green fund that I recall, so I think I was in the relevant cabinet post at the time, was discussed a few years ago and was also supported by the then leader. I'd just like to ask what the current position is with that green fund. Has it been established? Is it operating? I note that paragraph 22 says that the festival must provide evidence of the fund to the council upon request. Has any such request been made? I've got one other question as well, but I'll leave it there for the moment.
I'm something myself. Yeah, that might be something myself and Natasha want to comment on, but it is in there, and there has been a payment to a local organisation. However, we're looking to formalise it further in this agreement, and myself and Natasha have been in negotiations with festival organisers to get a much more robust approach to that in terms of trying to get an exact fee for the number of cars that visit the site that will go straight back into the council to help support Natasha in terms of managing the park.
That sort of leads into my other question, because I've noted in paragraph 29, it refers to a green levy for those arriving and parking in addition to the levy agreed. Are we actually talking about two levies, an attendance levy and a parking levy? Or are we just talking about one levy, and does it relate to parking or attendance? I just found what was stated in paragraph 29 made me a little confused as to what actually is in place.
I'm not surprised at that. Thank you for your comments. The negotiations that have happened to date are going to firm up the travel green policy. So I think we're very close to agreeing that. The festival organisers are indicating that they would also like to do something else, but we've had to have further discussions around that, what that might be. But it's certainly more than we currently get.
So just to clarify for my brain, there's definitely going to be a levy on vehicles coming to the site, and there's also potential or the actuality of a levy purely on the basis of attendance as well. So someone who comes in a car that buys a parking ticket and also buys a festival ticket will be paying a levy on those two activities.
I think that's the hope. The first one is a bit more certain. The second one still needs to be negotiated.
Thank you, Alex. Anybody else? Oh, Natasha, would you like to have an opinion on the green levy?
I have an opinion, but it's the same as Alex's. So
Okay.
thank you.
I'm all about empowerment, you know. You don't want to add anything?
No, Alex has covered it. The current green fund is a levy applied to attendees who access the event via non-sustainable modes of transport. Good to ensure that as we go through those negotiations, we ensure that where we can increase any levy to have those more sustainable communities and impact back into the use for the area.
Alex,
Just say that unusually, this is quite a unique paper actually, because most of the papers that you receive, there is a specific officer that's responsible for one particular area. This one is extremely unusual. So you've got multiple authors on this paper, and you've got three of us, and Kevin, Natasha and myself, who all have a responsibility for the music festival. And then there's also Michelle in highways. So it is fairly... Sarah does do some bits, but not on the festival.
We won't leave you out.
So it is quite unique. So that's why you've got comments from a number of us on this paper.
Thank you. So if we haven't got any more questions, can we go to the recommendation? So it's to agree the terms set out in the report for an extension of 7 years to the IOWFA, which is the festival agreement, license, with a further 3-year option to the Isle of Wight Festival Limited, that's what I was thinking of, to stage the Isle of Wight Festival for the period of 2026 to 2033. Oh, I'll be really old then. Inclusive, and to delegate authority to the Strategic Director for Community Services, that's Colin, just to be clear, to conclude the details of the Isle of Wight FA licence. Okay, so I'm proposing that. Somebody, thank you very much, Councillor Fuller, and affirmation for everybody. There we go. Thank you very much. Again, thank you for the work you're doing. So now we've got the committee member development plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. For those of you that serve on more than one committee, you will have heard me speak about this numerous times, so apologies. But for those of you who haven't, in May, when the new constitution was agreed by full council, you also in there agreed to committee development plans. And so these papers are coming to each committee with detail of those committee development plans, with a recommendation that you approve the content of the report and begin to undertake that learning and development, and that any new learning is discussed at these service committee meetings and is highlighted so that we can either facilitate that, or you can update us on what learning you have done. In the next quarter, so the next committee in January or February, depending on where we put it on the work plan, there will be a report of completion of that learning and development so that you can keep updated. Chair, thank you.
Could you remind me, because I asked you this before, but I've forgotten, it's getting late. I've just done some training with the Local Government Association. How do I log in? Do I log in for my members page and add it to my file somehow?
Yes, so on the front page of the intranet, when you log in, there is a learning and development quick link. If you click on there, that opens up the learning hub for you, where all of this learning is. If you want to add learning, you can just put my learning and then add. If you want a member of staff to go through that, we can arrange that. It's a pretty intuitive system, but if you want somebody to go through, it's absolutely fine.
Got any questions? So we've got all of this data, and is that on a learning hub? Is some of that
It's
e-learning?
all on the learning hub under each of your profiles. So if you're serving on a service committee, your profile will show what you've done, and that will cross over all the service
Go in
committees.
through learning and development?
Yes.
And then it'll be there, so I need
Yes.
to know that anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
And
brilliant.
my learning, and then it's all there.
We had a session on this, apart from going,
Only back in induction, probably.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so maybe we could do that. Maybe offer that.
If it's required, absolutely.
Yeah. Councillor,
Just a quick question for Sarah. I was going to just send you an email, but I thought as we've got lots of time to spare, I don't use my iow.gov.uk email address. Is there still the potential for me to be able to access those tools for learning, please? And if so, how do I do it?
Very pleased to tell you, Councillor Fuller, that the Learning Hub is web-based, so you can access it from any device, and your profile is there ready for you on any device. So it's literally just what I'll do is follow up after this committee. I'll follow up with an email to your correct email address with instructions, and just to show you where the link to the hub is again.
okay. So what are we doing with this one? Are we just noting this one?
Yes, you're agreeing it. So we have
So
had
by
votes in other
acclamation, are we
committees.
agreeing this? Thank you very much. So now we're going on to the work plan. Colin, do you want to touch on that? Did you?
Is it not member questions? Okay.
Okay. All right then. I was just going straight to the Okay, so we did have a couple of questions. I thought it's a work.
Oh, sorry. I'm just reading off the agenda. Actually, we read questions.
Yeah, it's always at the end. Yeah, look at me, I was just doing as I was told then. Okay, so the work plan, who wants to go? Tash, do you want to do that with us, or does anybody actually want to add anything, have anything to say about it? Councillor Blake, please do.
Chair, I was going to raise this motion, but I sort of ran out of time for it, so I'd like to raise it at this point. I've got a part of our remit is the crematorium and bereavement services, and particularly in the case of the crematorium, it would be proficient to look at how that service delivery is undertaken, and if there's any efficiencies, if there's any ways of expanding on that. And to that end, because there are some commercial sensitivities within that would mean that we'd have to over close time during public meetings, it might be proficient to, I think, proficient to have a working group separate so that we can bring a more trimmed down report to committee at a later date. With understanding, yeah, so that and therefore invite all members to join that working group should they wish to go over that part of the service to bring a more eloquent report to a committee later on.
So to everybody will be part of that working group. so that we all get that. Okay. So you're proposing that? I'll second that. Do we agree to do that? Yeah, thank you very much. Easy. Anything else anybody wants to add to it? You're okay with that? Okay, so now we're on members' question time. Okay, so we've got a written question from Becca Cameron, and it's to me, and it's would you like to read your question out?
Yeah. Oh,
I've done a lot of talking now.
In flood events, West White residents, often elderly and mobility limited, have no local source of sandbags and must travel to Cowes or Ryde. Sandbags are heavy to lift and difficult to dispose of. Freshwater Parish Council has piloted lightweight, flat-packed, reusable aqua bag. Will Island Roads introduce a stock of aqua bags for emergency use by elderly and vulnerable residents and establish a simple local collection and replenishment protocol?
So we've got a response on that one. So aqua bags can be explored. However, it must be recognised that it is householders' responsibility to protect their property from flooding. Town, parish and community councils may want to purchase the bags for residents in their ward. Notwithstanding that, arrangements exist for delivery of sandbags to residents I've identified as vulnerable by the council under certain conditions. I'm going to, as it is to me, I'm going to add a little bit to that. Be a bit of a rebel. That is technically true. My issue actually with that is they might get delivered to vulnerable adults, but they don't get collected. So they end up in people's gardens, etc. And I think we need to kind of look, I know that's another cost, but we need to kind of look at that, please. Natasha, have you got an answer on that one? Because I've asked that before, you see.
Yes, I do have an answer on that one. In those circumstances, when a vulnerable resident is unable to dispose of those sandbags, we will arrange for the collection of them.
Because that's not the answer I got when I asked before. I can't remember when. I should have asked you. Thank you very much. So now I'm not worried about it.
Thank you.
Okay, so actually that's really good. Thank you very, very much. We have got another in-depth question, but the councillor isn't here. So where does that go? Onto the website? Yeah, so that goes onto the website. And actually, some of this stuff we did speak about in the first substantive part of this meeting. So it's about flooding and insurance, etc., etc. That will go on the website. So that's the end of the meeting. Is that Colin? Is that the end of the meeting? Thank you.
It says ending on the agenda.
I feel like asking, do I get a diploma?
No, I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm just sorting out the logistical things at the end. Thank you.